What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at Guild Saga Vanished Worlds, an upcoming tactical title that roughly 1 week ago launched into early access, but currently has a public demo available as part of Steam's Next Fest, which is currently ongoing, and while I covered that particular event, this particular game is one I might want to check out, and so, naturally, here we are. Now, before we dive too much into this, I think it's worth mentioning that if you do a little bit of research into Guild Saga, like I did, since that's the case for basically anything that gets featured on the channel, you might just find an older project by the name of Guild Saga from the same developer that was apparently some NFT project that failed, and it looks like they took at least some of that and turned it into an actual game, as this one is simply a regular gaming experience, so to speak. But with that out of the way, probably the first big thing to know about Guild Saga Vanished Worlds here is that it is heavily inspired by Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, with a lot of very similar systems, though obviously with a 2D pixel art based approach, and given that this channel covers games like that pretty extensively, some of these mechanics will almost certainly sound familiar to you. But to kick this off, Guild Saga puts us in the role of a hero who has just been brought into the fold of the Heroes Guild and sent on a mission of some importance, specifically to a yet uncharted continent, rife with all sorts of problems and intrigue that make up the plot, but as with any good adventure, while we were on our way there via the sea, it of course was caught in a shipwreck before we find ourselves inland on an island that is completely foreign to us. Now, as we do that, we're going to first create a character, which involves customizing the appearance of your sprite, but also things like attributes, abilities, your background, etc., all of which plays a part in building your character, some of which come with a few substantial bonuses, but much like Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, you'll put points into a given school of skills, which affects both your ability to use those well, but also the ability to pick up skills from said tree, to then, of course, use in the turn-based combat. Now, gameplay-wise, the demo here was limited to roughly the introduction followed by the first big dungeon, so I didn't get to see everything fully fleshed out, but there are some important things to mention. For starters, there will be a full roster of companions who can be given their own character builds, etc., pretty standard party RPG stuff, so you will be able to build those characters how you would like to, especially with this classless system that just sees you increasing ranks in given things, and many of those companions will have their own stories, side quests, etc. that you would expect. And you and your party are going to go around and explore, which can see you doing things like gathering resources for crafting professions, and apparently the best stuff even will require crafting, and along the way you'll also run into all sorts of NPCs who can help you out, or simply be interacted with, including the ability to talk to animals. So despite the 2D approach, there is a decent amount of interactivity even here in the demo, so it certainly shows a lot of promise, which I would say isn't much of a surprise given the wild success of the games a lot of this is based on. Which brings us to combat. Now, right away, I will say that this game brings forward, I would say, Divinity Original Sin 2's most reviled mechanic, which is its physical and magic armor system. That is to say, if you want to apply status effects to a character, you have to first chew through either their physical or magic armor respectively based on the type of attack, and before you can hit their health with an attack, you need to first chip away the type of armor relevant to the damage you're dealing. It's not a system that bothers me much personally, but a lot of people really hated that from Original Sin 2, so I think it's definitely a big thing to note. Now, beyond that, pretty standard turn-based combat. You have movement points and action points, which are the orange and blue dots next to the action bar at the bottom, respectively. And you can move as much as you have movement points for, and you can take as many actions as you have action points for. Actions all seem to cost between 1 and 3 points, and there are moves and things you can do to adjust how many points you have available, such as casting a haste spell, which will let you perform potentially basic attacks many times in combat as opposed to just taking one action. With the rest of combat, of course, varying greatly based on the character you've got, their skills, their abilities, though realistically I think the easiest way, again, to put this is that this feels like 2D Original Sin 2. There's a few different abilities here and there, things like that, names of course, but the bulk of it felt surprisingly natural for me as someone who's played that game extensively. A lot of it was just simply almost one for one here, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, as that game has quite a bit of depth and approaches to combat that it can be abused. Now, with all of that said, this game certainly looks promising because a lot of the systems it is built on have already been proven, frankly. So a lot of, I would say, the quality of this game moving forward with its early access release and then its eventual launch after what they hope to be about a year in early access is going to come down to whether or not their narrative and the world they build around those systems proves to be more engaging than Original Sin 2, because I think they might wind up putting themselves in a corner where the question becomes, why would I not just go play Original Sin instead? So if they can make an interesting world with a good amount of choice and consequence, as their Steam page at least implies that they are trying to do, then I think this game could be a really great one to keep an eye on. With that in mind, I will probably check its release out here in a couple months, but for today, that's pretty much going to do it. I'd love to hear what you think about this down in the comment section below, which does naturally, of course, mean to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.